And we've also uninvited 17 of our prior contracted relationships through group business and corporate business to work with our company anymore. We had some very heavy volume models and some, I would like to say it's more of an old Florida mentality. It's take somebody's money, put them on a bus, make the money. I don't care about the customer. And that is not it doesn't align with our morality and our views for our customers anymore.
Welcome to the AttractionPros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the AttractionPros podcast.
Welcome to AttractionPros Live! Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going great, Josh. How are you? Actually, it's fantastic.
Yes! It's going amazing. This is a very special episode of the AttractionPros podcast. I'm so excited to be here right now.
It really is. So this is going to be episode 250.
Wow!
And we are at the Florida Attractions Association Annual Conference. Yes.
In beautiful West Palm Beach, Florida. And you know, it only makes sense that we celebrate our 250th episode with the Florida Attractions Association, because if it weren't for FAA, we might not have actually ever started this podcast.
So it was back 5 years ago, before the conference in Jacksonville, right, where you and I were having dinner, and we were talking about business and kind of what the next steps were for each of us. And Josh said to me, Matt, I think you should start a podcast. And what'd you say?
That was what I said.
Oh, that's what you said, yeah. And I said, I think you should start a podcast.
And I said, no.
Yeah.
I said, if anyone's going to start a podcast, it's going to be you, and I'm going to listen. I'm going to be your biggest fan.
Right. And then neither one of us started a podcast. So then a couple of months later, we were talking, and we said, what if we did this podcast thing together? What if we teamed up and said, let's go ahead and do a podcast together? And this is what happened.
And then pulling together our resources and our microphones and our looking at how to start a podcast and how to get on the platforms. It was born in September of 2017, about 249 weeks ago.
Exactly. So we are super excited to share this 250th episode with everybody. And the topic, the thing that we have been really focusing on in a lot of our interviews, is the fact that, you know, so many people talk about guest experience and how important that is, and then employee experience and how important that is. And we've really seen kind of an intersection between those two. And ultimately, we're all human beings, right? And so how we interact with our guests is similar to how we interact with our employees. And so we wanted to kind of test a hypothesis. Like, are the techniques that we use to interact and attract guests similar to what we might use to interact with and attract our employees? And so that's what we wanted to kind of put out to everybody today.
So, for example, Matt, if I were to say it costs 5 to 7 times more to attract a new guest than it does to retain an existing one, that would be a good argument for investing in repeat visitation and getting your guests to come back.
Absolutely. So it's probably the same for employees, right? I mean, we all know turnover costs a lot in productivity and our culture. So it also has a monetary cost. So when you think about all the things that you have to do to get a new employee, it's probably pretty similar to what it would take to get a new guest to come through the gates.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to need from all of you. We are going to transcend guest and employee experience multiple times throughout the course of this conversation. We will look at the guest journey as well as the employee journey and look at ways that we are, I would say, influencing the guest experience, amplifying the guest experience, and if those can be flipped around and turned towards the employee experience and your employee culture, as well as vice versa. We'll look at it from what you're doing from an employee experience standpoint. Can those same processes be applied to your guests? So this is this theory that we've really developed over the last several years throughout the course of, 249 previous conversations, and we very much have this hypothesis that we want to test. So this episode is very much like a science experiment in action.
Right.
A little nervous, but I'm pretty confident too, in that so many of the things that we talk about from guest experience and employee experience are identical.
So let's start it off. Let's talk about attracting guests, right? Or attracting clients to a business. What are some of the ways that you attract a guest to your business? Whether it's through marketing or word of mouth, what are some of the ways that you do that?
And looking at it from the top of the guest journey.
About our Facebook page and our social medias, the Instagram, the TikToks, all of that stuff.
All of it.
Yeah, we do all of that stuff. So
tell us who you are, where you're from.
Oh, I'm sorry. Felicia Cook, Marineland Dolphin Adventure at St. Augustine. And so we do all of that social media, and hopefully we're doing it trying to attract people to interact with us. That's the big thing right now, is getting them to interact with what we put on social media. So those are the things we do. I mean, yes, we are in our maps that go around Florida. We are, we do our print stuff, but they're not as interactive as the social medias can be. And you know what? Our employees love social media, so they do it. They do interviews for us that we put on social media. They do. They'll swim with the dolphins, and we'll record it, and that goes on social media. So a big thing we like to do is encourage, we do not make, but encourage all of our staff members. It doesn't matter if you're janitorial or if you're a trainer, to get in the water. Not everybody gets in, but to get in the water and do an interaction. That way, they can talk to the guest one-on-one about what that was like. So...
Yeah.
So your guests love social media and your employees love social media. So let's flip this. Do your prospective employees love social media, and can you, or do you, or does anybody here use that as a recruitment technique? I remember we did. Oh yeah, Cindy, tell us.
Yeah, we do. We put it out there on Facebook. We put it out there on Instagram, and we even use video, showing people working, having a great time. We also promote the benefits of working in an attraction. Not only do you get good pay, good atmosphere, benefits, but you get free admission to not only, St. Augustine Attractions Association has the letter that gets them and their families and all the attractions in St. Augustine, but then the attraction share program with FAA. So we put that out there in our Help Wanted ads. Free admission to attractions in St. Augustine, Florida. And that really helps a lot.
So when we look at social media as a marketing technique, we're looking at it really from two different prongs here. One is we want to encourage guests to buy a ticket and come visit, and we want to encourage employees, prospective employees, to fill out an application and come get a job. So that's a sub-hypothesis there that I think we're on a good track for. But let's hear from Mary.
Hi, Mary Stella from Dolphin Research Center in the fabulous Florida Keys. And what you're saying really resonates, because social media, advertising is what you say about yourself, and to some extent social media is that as well. But in the interaction parts of it, it is a way to introduce people to who you are, what you do, and how you do it before they ever get to your door, more than they're going to see in a print ad. So one of the things that we started, this was especially important during the 10 weeks of COVID closure. Because how do you keep people connected to your attraction and to what you do when they cannot physically come to see you? And a couple days before the Florida Keys closed down, we started doing Facebook Lives. We did them every single day. The only people that were at work were half of our care team, because unlike a store or a museum, you don't turn out the lights and leave the dolphins and the sea lions. They require the care. So they started doing the things, and it was just, here are the dolphins, talk about the dolphinality, all the things that we would talk about while you were there, and introducing you to the animals. What's our philosophy? So that attracted more people, and everybody else was sitting home also at the time. So we might go on a Facebook Live and have 500 people coming in a room. We're also a nonprofit. We can put a Donate Now button on it. So that is helpful as well, and it became a fundraising thing. But people, the page trended, media would hear something, they would want to do a story, and we get people, oh, where are you located? Because Facebook recommended the page based on maybe their friends were going to it. Where are you located? So then when we opened up and they were planning vacations, they then came, and they knew what to expect. They knew to expect a good time. They knew to expect friendly people. And that, I think, enabled people to learn our mission and our culture when they couldn't come and visit. And I think that that's important. If we flip that for both employees and things like that, we get people who want to come and work for us because of who we are, because they embrace the mission and they know the conservation and they know the way that we care for the animals. So it is a double-edged sword is a negative. I don't know. It's a double benefit to being able to present who you are in real, authentic manner that goes beyond like a printed page or even a TV commercial. It's an authenticity because you're talking about who you are, and we continue to do it. We don't do them every day anymore. We kept it up for more than a year that we did Facebook Live every single day. We do it once a week, and often I'm the host, and put me in front of a microphone and I'll go gab for half an hour about dolphins. I have no problem. I just wing it. So
that's great. No, it's such an awesome example and so amazing to see just how you've been able to leverage Facebook Live to be able to build that demand. And I love what you said about advertising is what you say about yourself, and PR is what other people say about you, is what you get other people to say about you. Yeah, so being able to look at that from a reputation strengthening standpoint of whether it is your reputation of the guest experience and being able to influence that, whether it's through online reviews or social media, as well as the employee experience and why it's just so valuable to come and work for this organization, and in your case, people being able to really connect and just latch on to the mission.
Well, and one thing that I really took from all of those examples was the word interaction. Right? If you're getting people to interact with you and your brand and understand who you are authentically, then you're going to attract the people that want to be involved, whether that's a guest and potentially a member or an employee that's going to be immediately bought in. So often we have employees that come, and I think we were talking about this yesterday, where people will, fill out applications and apply to 10 different places at once, right? And that's just kind of that blanket shotgun approach. Do they really buy into the mission? Do they really understand what they're getting into? Whereas if they've already interacted with you, they've already had some contact and interacted with the brand and the facility, they know what they're getting into. And again, once they step on property, they're much more bought in as a guest or as an employee. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and from the application standpoint, kind of even looking at it from that standpoint, one of the speakers in the general sessions talked about the difficulty of filling out a job application in many cases, and when I look at things from the guest experience, we talk about like ticketing, like how easy is it to buy a ticket? Like you want your guests to be able to get to your website, get to your ticket page, buy a ticket very seamlessly, very easy, very intuitively, and it's like we can look at that from the job application standpoint as well for someone who has built that desire, but also then I would say like diving in deeper, because of course you don't want that shotgun approach, so you want to perhaps at least take care of a lot of the administrative component and then be able to get them to a spot where they then maybe need to add a little more in as far as why it's important for them to be applying for this particular position.
Yeah.
Oh, Jared.
Hey, Jared Reed, Wild Florida. Just one comment about social media. Speaking from both sides, so we thought we did a pretty good job at social media during the pandemic and everything like that. Well, I guess we weren't, because all of our followers are saying, hey, you're not posting as much as we want. Even current employees are like, hey, we need to be more out there. So we really revisited it. The first of the year, we hired a full-time social media employee.
Good.
She's salary, sits in their office, goes out and posts every single day, does multiple things on all different platforms. And it's been really good. Even somebody yesterday here at the conference mentioned that they're noticing that more, and I thought that was really cool. So it even got to a point where we need to hire someone full-time instead of just partially doing it.
Yeah.
But your employees wanted it too. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how we see
We
it.
just hired a full-time communications associate for the Pirate Museum and the Colonial Quarter, and it's made a huge difference because that's all she does, and she's really focused on it, and she's having fun, and she's out there going to our live concerts at night, posting live videos, and going through and doing the cannon firings, and doing the reels with that. So it's been definitely a well worth it position. And when we advertised for that position, we had like 60 applicants, we had 20 interviews, and it was really hard because we had great qualified people to pick one, but I think we did a great job. So.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned is that I believe in your social media there is authenticity, because you can do a very polished, produced commercial, You can do a polished ad, but when you are on your social media and it is pictures of the experience and it is the text that you're doing, I believe that it enhances the message through the authenticity, and people respond that because that is what the consumer is looking for.
It's real.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Yes. I think our employees look for it too. Mm-hmm. I mean, our employees have jumped in with both feet as far as I want to do one, so I think it does hit both sides. I'm thinking your hypothesis is getting good. So you may not be scientists, but I think you're hitting it on the head.
Well,
Awesome.
you all are hitting it on the head.
Yeah.
And look at the audience then posting their own pictures of their experience with us and tagging us.
Right. Yep.
Especially with the kind of things that you guys both have with the interaction with animals. I mean, what better platform do you have than interacting with live animals?
Oh, I love you, Cindy. Thank you.
Well, I think you guys going to the Colonial, I mean, that's a living history.
Yeah,
but everybody has
Everybody
it.
loves explosions, so,
Like, don't be
Fires.
afraid if you don't have animals. I mean, look,
And you've got animals too, Jared.
if you're a kayaking trip and you're putting people, in that experiential interaction, is wide open.
So I would love to dig a little deeper on that, especially on the employee side, because as we talk about authenticity and what the employee is really going to go through, they're going to have some challenging times, right? Like when they are interacting with someone who's not happy with the product and they have to, maybe refund somebody or somebody's yelling at them and that kind of thing. So how do we share with an employee what the real experience is going to be like, so that when they come in, they're not saying, 30 days in, oh, you didn't tell me I'm going to have to deal with like angry people. Like you said, this was going to be a fun job. So I'm curious where that balance is.
Yeah, all about setting those expectations.
We do tell our people. I won't say that we tell everybody, but definitely our guest service, our front of the line people, our guest service, our education, our photo, our trainers, definitely the front of the line people are told, we work in a human world and we are all animal people. Now, there's a reason we're animal people. Maybe we don't like humans. I don't know. So we tell them we work in a human world and we can't please everybody. Even if we've done everything right, somebody's going to be dissatisfied. So we do tell them that. We may not tell them that they might get spit on or, yelled at to the nth degree, but we do tell them that there are going to be unhappy people, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can't make them happy. And we've taught them to say, I'm really sorry that you didn't get the experience you desired. We always offer for them to redo the experience. Would you like to? We do. Would you like to redo the experience on your time? If we have something available that next slot, we'll put them in. If not, they can't stay that long. When would you like to come back? We always offer them to redo the experience because we don't want them to leave that way. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't work, we say then, I'm sorry, we have to agree to disagree. That we did our best, and unfortunately, we could not meet your expectations.
What I really like is how you actually just covered both expectations for employees and expectations for guests all in one breath right there, actually. Yeah. So really, I was going to say let's flip it, but you kind of like wove it in right there, because when we look at just expectations in general, we started talking about expectations for employees. What's this job going to be like? We also talk about it from the guest side as well, as far as setting expectations for guests. It was one of the things I talked about in my breakout yesterday. That expectation in our industry needs to be incredibly high because of all of the alternative options that we have. There's other attractions within your region or other ways to just occupy your time, money, resources, and then there's everything else. If I'm sitting on my couch binge watching Stranger Things on Netflix, it means I'm not coming and visiting your attraction, right? I know, it's scary, yeah.
Every time I see a tree with weird roots, we were walking around Palm Beach the other day, and there's one of those big trees with the big roots. I'm like, oh my god,
it's the upside down. Yeah.
I'm scared. I need to get away from here.
But there's all those alternative options, which include obviously Netflix, of course, is just one example of that. So we need to set that expectation extremely high. And I would say the same thing needs to be for employees as well, as of the expectation of working here needs to be high enough to be able to get that job application just to come in, for someone to say, like, this looks like a desirable place for me to work. And then the challenge for both of those lies on exceeding that expectation. So on operations, which is going above and beyond and creating those wow experiences,
Yes.
and then creating those wow experiences for employees as well, of saying, like, I thought this job was going to be great, but it's actually amazing. So I would actually transition the conversation into that, of saying, what are some of the ways you exceed your employees' high expectations?
Well, I think I talked about it yesterday. I'm Cindy from the Colonial Experience in the Pirate Museum. One of our employees, we like to embrace and empower our employees to come up with ideas on projects and displays and activities in both museums. So we had one of our employees that helped put together, with his own sweat, hammering, building, construction, a whole agricultural exhibit with a cow roping experience to talk about the history of cattle and agriculture in Florida, which is 500 years now. It's been 500 years since the first cattle came. So just as while we were here, he was building this enclosure and he's setting it all up, and then sending us videos of him yesterday with interacting with the guests, showing the kids how to rope a cow. So, and he's super excited about it. He can't wait to jump into another idea and add more and more to the experience, but nobody's been asking him to do it. We just allow them to come up with ideas on things to do, and always allow them to use their own ideas and blood, sweat, and tears to make these things happen.
It's awesome.
So the expectation is sort of freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? That you have the autonomy, you have the empowerment to do what you feel is right in that particular situation. And I think that's incredibly powerful for any employee. I mean, think about the positions that many of you are in, as business leaders, business owners, where you get to do, I don't want to say what you want, but you have a lot of influence and input on what you do. And think about that from a frontline employee's perspective. If they're kind of given a project and given the empowerment to make the decisions, I mean, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, we do that in our retail shop too at the Pirate Museum. The people that work behind the desk selling tickets are also allowed to go and rearrange an area if they want to. And they get so excited. Oh my gosh, you have to come and see what I just did here. It looks so good, And they're learning another skill in merchandising outside of their already sales skills of selling and upselling tickets and combos. So that gives them ownership of what we have, and that now they're all looking through all the catalogs online to buy new merchandise. And look what I found! We could buy this. We could buy this. So empowering and giving them the opportunity to step outside of what traditionally their role is makes them feel like part of the whole organization, and they're contributing to every aspect of it.
Mary.
We have opportunities for people not to feel pigeonholed in their department. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we are a smaller staff. We have had staffing issues since the pandemic. So ever since Hurricane Irma, because we lost a number of people in Hurricane Irma, that we do a lot of cross-training. In different departments. So you may have an opportunity to help out in a department that is not at all yours. And when I say, and sometimes it's at the holidays when we were blessedly busy, the photography staff and the guest services staff, which are both shorthanded, were all out doing the pictures of guests or helping the new people coming in. Even our president was over in photo sales, showing customers their photos. And so leadership from top down does the cross training, but it can be simple things. I mean, we're not all animal trainers. We don't all get to work every single day with the dolphins and things like that, but there are opportunities. Maybe you're going out there and you're holding an umbrella for shade to shade the dolphin's eyes, or you're helping and you're swim monitoring, or I'm cross-trained in how to do narrations for the public for the narrated sessions, or how to help the research department with research observations. So there's a lot of that, and it's very positively rewarding. We are animal people, so positive reinforcement is the key at relationship and positive reinforcement. So there are different ways to reinforce people in that kind of thing. And it's nice because then you can get away from the front desk and go out and spend a little time out in the sunshine and breathe some fresh air. So, there's the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We embrace the platinum rule, which was do unto others as they would prefer that you do unto them. So it's also understanding what motivates, what is rewarding to that other person, and then trying to give some of that. And again, it's all the communication and knowing each other as a family and things like that. So I think that's important.
We're in the same boat. We have a gentleman who has worked with Marineland for over 30 years. I think it's 36 this year. But and then we have our brand new babes. So we always kind of set up a mentorship. And of course, our older one's a little gruff and scary, And he's really not. He's just a teddy bear. But he works in the maintenance department, and I found out that he does woodwork and that he loves woodwork. So, yes, he still works in the maintenance department, and yes, he still does what we need him to do as far as electrical and the stuff that he's skilled at. But when there's not a project like that going on, he is creating something out of wood. You and I both know that wood doesn't last forever, but we don't care because it makes him so happy, And so he makes our ambassador wood pieces that we stand around the property for people to take pictures with. But something else we do is we found a lot of burnout during COVID because we had less employees doing a lot more work. And so we just switched departments. Okay, you three are going to go to that department today. You three are going to go to that department today. And it really helped their morale, and it helped them get to know the other department members. You can't do that in the height of your season, but you can definitely do it in what you call your lull. So, but I think that's rewarding for them. And it helps them appreciate the other, well, we're doing this all the time. What are they doing? It helps them appreciate what your other coworkers are doing. Right. So, and most of our employees come because somebody who works for us said, you've got to join us. Mm-hmm. You're going to love it. You're going to have the best time. So that's how we get most of our employees.
So then that kind of completes the I would say the cycle, because it should be very very cyclical of like the employee experience, that when they're so satisfied that they are hopefully staying, you're able to retain them for a significant amount of time, but then B, they become your advocates and your evangelists for for that. I talk about that a lot from the guest experience side of doing that from the guest standpoint. So I would say actually that would be a perfect point to flip it, to say, I know, Mary, you talked about kind of using Facebook and social media and things like that. Would love to hear, as far as the guest advocacy, for them to say the same thing, as far as you need to go, yeah. Whether it's instead of you need to go work there, you need to go buy a ticket, you need to go visit with your family. So anybody have any creative solutions in that department?
No, I don't want to keep Mike hogging.
Here, Jared.
Well, we just finished, and this is Jared again, Wild Florida. I just finished at the end of May. We do what we call a Gator Week, where in previous years we've done it free. You come to the park, you can get in for free just to our park. But now we've tried to do it more focused on conservation. And actually, being an animal park ourselves, conservation is everything. Mm-hmm. And man, people show up and they open their wallets, and the idea of saving animals in any capacity is awesome. So that's one thing we've done that have caused our guests to want to come back every year. They know in May it's Gator Week, and they come.
It's like something they can look forward to.
Yeah. I want to go to Gator Week.
Okay, let's do it.
It's in May.
I know. I'll be back. Plan
for next year.
Yeah.
Your happy customer is your best referral. I mean, and that's in anything. But when you look at, so we are a nonprofit. We have a membership program. So when someone renews their membership, every level of membership has a certain number of unlimited free admission for the year. But we also, depending on the level of membership, give them passes to give to their friends. Because if they can also say, hey, look, I'm a member, and look here, go and take that, we have a chance to convert that other person to a member. When they come in, they have the proud member sticker, or if they come in with a member, proud friend of a member, or a friend of a proud member. So that, and they're always acknowledged in our narrations. We see the member stickers and things, but we see the referrals. We will see people on our Facebook page tell other commenters, oh, you've never been there, you have to go and visit.
And then looking at it just from like a business and from a marketing standpoint, you find that that's probably a lower cost of acquisition than perhaps a lot of other traditional marketing and advertising. Actually, very much going back to the point you're saying earlier of saying focus on the PR standpoint, get your most satisfied people to now say things about you, and then even give them that little push, that incentive, that pass to bring that friend, and then they can come and see it for themselves. So.
I think one of the things that I think we infer or kind of assume is that we're providing a great experience, right? And that's got to be kind of the foundation of, are people going to come back, right? Are they naturally going to organically say, Jared, you got to come to Gator Week, right? Because it was such a great experience. Whether or not we're incentivizing them through some kind of program, which I think is great to kind of have those mechanisms out there, but. To me, again, the bedrock is it a great experience? And I know you all, have such great experiences that people naturally want to talk about it. So to me, that's one of the things that we can't overlook is, we can try to get people to give us a review. And I know Josh has a story about going up to a valet and they ask for a review before you even experience the service. So looking at the service first and using that as our framework.
Yeah. So the quick story is that I pulled up to the valet, and a gentleman comes up. He gives me the ticket, gives me the instructions to retrieve my car. He then gives me a card with the TripAdvisor logo and said, "I would love it if you posted a positive review about me." And I looked at him and I said, "About what?" About you giving me this ticket and the instructions to get my car? I said, deliver an experience and there will be something that is worth reviewing. So reviews cannot be for the sake of reviews. They are for the sake of an experience. And Matt, like you said, the bedrock of the foundation is that phenomenal positive experience.
We do have little cards that we give out at the end. If people are saying, "Oh my gosh, this was the greatest thing ever," then we'll hand them the card and say, "Here, can you please say something on these review sites about your experience?"
Yeah. And on your social media, you have to, we encourage people, please share our post. Please share this live. Because then that's sending us to everybody in their circle, and that is extremely valuable.
Yeah. Well, and I think just like we talked about, somebody coming into your organization as an employee, that's got to be an easy experience, and getting someone into the organization as a guest needs to be an easy experience. If we want the reviews, that's got to be an easy experience too, right? We got to show them where the button is. Mary, earlier you talked about the donation button, right? We've got to show them where that button is and make it easy for them, because people have so many things going on. So I know you talked about frictionless yesterday, so it's got to be frictionless if those are the behaviors we want them to display.
And as a bit of a side note here for everyone out there listening, if you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us a review and also share it with others. We talk about it all day and say, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. We don't have nearly the amount of reviews that I think we should for having 250 episodes. So if you're listening, if you enjoy it, leave us a review. If you don't, let us know. Let us know what we can do to improve.
That's right. So one of the areas that I think we need to focus on is looking at how we retain employees and how we create loyalty with guests, right? Very similar kind of concepts. So I'm curious with the group, what kind of things do you do, maybe from a guest perspective, to invite them back, to create loyalty in your guests to continue to visit?
Audrey Jowett from Revolution Adventures. How do we get people to come back? Well, the simple answer is we offer them a membership. If you sign up with us for the year, specifically, I should say, for things like archery, we don't do it on our motorized activities, but we do it for fishing, and we do it for archery, we do it for shooting. And if you sign up with us, we'll refund you the cost of your initial. It's just a clever way round, really, of saying you got this one for free. But that's what we do. We have a lot of people who genuinely say, "Well, we come to Florida 4 times a year. It's worth the money," and it's because we're giving them back that initial fee, it does. Then we send them a newsletter, a membership newsletter from time to time. If we've got something to talk about, we've got new arrows that have got specific weights on them, or we've got a new target that's going to go there, or we've brought in an animal target instead of just straightforward target archery. You can now shoot at an animal if that makes you feel better. And so on. Well, a lot of people do come to us pre-hunting season so they can hone up their skills. But that's what we do.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're offering them membership and allowing them basically to apply their price of admission towards
Yes.
it by refunding it. So yeah. Excellent. Yes.
I'm Lauren Perry, and I work at the Henry Morrison Flagler Museum. And being a nonprofit museum, we also have a membership program. And you basically get free admission for the entire year that you are a member, from the day that you sign up till the day it expires. And you also get invited to special members-only events. So we have special receptions where you get sneak peeks at our exhibitions. You get to come and mix and mingle with other like-minded people who are interested in history and supporting cultural arts in the local area. We provide entertainment, obviously free food, drinks and refreshments. But then you also get discounts on a lot of our programs throughout the year. We also offer a really special tea service in our Flagler Keenan Pavilion, which is basically a glass room. It is where Henry Flagler's rail car is housed, and you get to sit down and have a Gilded Age style tea, and if you're a member, you get a discount on that as well. So a lot of people use their memberships to entertain, to bring visitors. So if we have a seasonal person who's here 6 months out of the year and they have guests throughout that time, we see a lot of our members bringing their visitors and their guests to come and visit. And then, of course, the locals support us because they'd like to attend our programs year-round.
Excellent. Thank you. Fantastic. Yeah. So let's flip it.
Let's flip it. Well, first of all, I'd love to kind
yes.
of talk about some of the things that they both mentioned that I think are very similar, and that is giving people something to do that's different the next time around, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's a different arrow or something else to shoot at, or giving them the tea experience, or something new, free food. I think keeping things fresh and giving something additional or different for people to experience, I think that's really critical when you think about loyalty, because you don't want to go back and do the same thing over and over again, right? Go ahead.
I will say our local audience here in the Palm Beach County market actually relies on us to put on certain events that have become family traditions. So, for instance, we have a Christmas tree lighting, we have an Easter egg hunt on our lawn, and we get repeat visitors to most of those holiday experiences. Our Mother's Day tea sells out, our Valentine's Day tea sells out, because that's been something we've been doing for years and years and years, and we almost sell out based on word of mouth at this point.
That's awesome.
So it's almost like this combination and balance of building traditions that are repeatable, and people want them to be exactly this. That they want to have multiple years in a row of the tree lighting or the tea service, and at the same time, what's something you can't do today? What's something you didn't do last time that you'll be able to do on your next visit, like the new targets in the archery range. So yeah, cool.
All right, so let's go ahead and flip that.
All right, let's talk about keeping your employees, whether it's coming into work every single day or extending their longevity within the organization, ultimately retaining employees. Tom.
I'm Tom from Lion Country Safari. One thing that we've started doing is we have the kindness committee, and we do different things for the employees. We do like breakfast in the morning, or we'll do like lunch and different things like that. We also do thank you cards, birthday cards, and it's kind of like not a one fit thing for each employee. Some employees, like the older crowd, will appreciate the breakfast. The younger crowd kind of appreciates the lunch. Some people appreciate the thank you cards. So it kind of shows you like different things work for different people. So you might get 50 people appreciate the breakfast, and then 20 people might appreciate the lunch. But you got to do the different things to mix it up to keep everyone happy.
I was going to say, I think that's really important, because just like we heard with the guests, there's certain things that will bring guests back, or certain things that they appreciate being a tradition, and it's the same with employees, right? And so I think back to my experience, working as a manager, and if everybody didn't show up to the breakfast, we thought it was a failure, right? Or if everybody didn't, like this particular incentive we were doing, it was a failure. But I think what you're, really alluding to is that you do have to meet people where they are, and it's not necessarily the same for everybody, and that's okay. That's really okay.
Yeah, and then even the importance of having that wide variety of different, whether it's incentives or recognition opportunities and things like that, acknowledging that people want to be appreciated in different ways is critical to that retention, because if it is with an attempt at being a one-size-fits-all type of model, and there's someone who says, well, I don't eat breakfast. Like, if it was just a breakfast, like, it's not worth it for me. I don't care. Like, this won't, not me though. I would come to the breakfast every time. But for someone who might say, well, this doesn't align with something that
Yeah, and sometimes you give up on things because you think they're not working, but then the crowd that appreciates that kind of feels that you might not care anymore because you gave up. But it's very important to keep those things for the ones that do, because it makes a big impact.
Yeah.
John Stavely with the Pirate Museum and Colonial Experience in St. Augustine. A big shift we've had in the last year especially is we've become extremely flexible with scheduling and time off. It's something that we didn't really feel we needed to do in the past, but now people insist on it. And I think what we've been through recently, a lot of folks saying, I need more personal time. My sister flew in, I'm going to spend the weekend with her. And so we've learned to not challenge that anymore. It's legitimate. They need a reason to be off, and so we accept that. And so we've really had to make a shift in the way we staff in order to accommodate that.
And I think it's really a shift in mindset too, right? Just being open to that. I think as we were coming out of the main part of the pandemic, I will say, because there's still, obviously COVID is out there still, but it really was a switch between, is it an employer market or an employee-driven market, right? And I think we're right in the middle of an employee-driven market where, they are the ones that have the power, if you will, because they can say, I'm not working this weekend because my sister's in town. Right? And if they're a good employee and you want to keep them for other reasons, then, in the past that might have been, okay, well, sayonara, we're never going to see you again. But now it's like, okay, we'll make that accommodation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember 10 years ago, which was 2012, it was still kind of part of the recession. I remember I had filing cabinets of job applications, and I had this one supervisor who would open that. It was actually probably an overly intimidating type of way to do it, but to say, like, if there's employee conflict, open up this filing cabinet of here's all these applications we have, here's a line of people waiting to take your job. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I would say is debatable, but very much not the now it's the other way around. Now the employee's got that filing cabinet of, well, not really, but of people who want them to come work for them. So, any other examples of employee?
I think this, Josh. I think you've hit the nail on the head quite here, because sometimes you feel as if your employees are driving the business forward and you are on the back burner because you didn't think about it. And one of the things I think that helps to retain people and get their loyalty is to make sure that whatever they come up with as an idea, good or bad, they share it with you first rather than tell other employees about it, particularly if it's a negative. And necessity is the mother of invention, they say, but negativity is a killer part of that. So if you hear that, well, I was with so-and-so and he told me that we're not going to do Employee of the Month anymore, and I think that's wrong. You should do that. Okay, well, we're not going to do Employee of the Month anymore because of this, but what do you think is a good idea? Let me hear what you're saying as a good idea. Don't just tell me the whinge. Tell me what your resolve to that is.
Yeah, when you crowdsource those types of ideas, then the employees have more ownership over it as well, instead of saying, this doesn't work, but like actually really give those opportunities to suggest what they want to see, and then they'll have more, hopefully more stake in it when once it's released, once it's launched.
Wouldn't you also say that's the same for the guests?
Absolutely.
Right, listening to the guest suggestions and even reporting back to, this is what we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, now we could dive into the topic of guest feedback, and collecting and using guest feedback to whether it's create operational enhancements or just overall improvements to the business that are driven by what guests are saying they want to see and what they don't want to see, and aligning that constructive feedback and not looking at it as a negative complaint, but reframing it as something that they're able to do to be able to actually be a part of the business's continuous improvement. So, does anybody have any examples of of changes that they have made due to guest feedback?
I have one. So we have a guest that comes with a disabled adult, and one of the things they had mentioned, we have like a flamingo viewing area, and the way the fence is built, it's like a picket fence, and they can't see through the fence, and it's something that we didn't really realize because of the way the view is. So we redesigned the fence in that area, and then they had also asked about adult changing stations in the bathrooms, and it's like something that we didn't really think about because we have a first aid station, and when they come they ask if they can use the first aid area. So we're redesigning the bathrooms at the splash area. So one of the things we added to the plan is the adult changing stations, and we fixed the changed the fence, but it's also an area where kids walk up to too, and they can't see through the fence, and it's looking at things from a different guest perspective is something that we don't think about every day, because we're just walking by it and we can all see over the fence, but just looking at it from a different person's perspective.
Yeah, no,
I was able to follow up with the guest and let them know, like, we're making these changes, and it was great because they're annual pass holders that come all the time, and they're still going to come, but being able to accommodate them and increase their length of stay in the park now.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it just stresses the importance of why guest feedback is so important. And one of the biggest arguments against it that I hear is, well, I know everything that's going on in my business. Like I walk outside of my office and I can see everything that's going on and whatever it is. And that might be true, but it is from the lens of the individual who's observing it and is not looking at the needs of every other type of guest demographic that's out there. So, being able to get that from the guest was critical because it might not have been anything that we're able to see with the way our eyes are adjusted towards what we're looking at.
Yeah. One of the greatest training exercises that I did at one of my jobs was, we actually had a wheelchair that we would put able-bodied team members in, and we would get them to go around the park in that wheelchair and have another employee push them around, right? And then they saw how tough it was to get up on a curb, right? Or they saw what the perspective is from that wheelchair perspective. And then we also blindfolded somebody and ask somebody else to kind of walk them around, and that's where you start to see how uneven your pavement is, right? And how hard it is to walk up that little itty-bitty incline that doesn't look like much when you can see it, but when you're not expecting it, and now you're starting to walk up a hill, it looks and it feels very, very different. So putting yourself literally in your guest's shoes, I think is critical to be able to see what some of those things are.
And then, Tom, you said that these are annual pass holders, and they keep coming back year over year, and they're renewing their pass. So it's like this is good for business, right? Like, yeah. and think of the advocacy about it as well, that they're telling people how much Lion Country cares about their experience.
Yeah, and there's other guests that would share the similar experience that that probably aren't going to send that email or say something that now are coming and seeing those changes that have been made and are probably going to get that annual pass and tell their friends and become new pass holders that we might have missed out on the opportunity on just because they came and it was a bad experience for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that actually kind of brings up something that I think would be interesting to talk a little bit about, is eliciting that feedback when it's not offered. If you have a way for your team members to provide a suggestion or feedback, but they don't, there's nothing in the suggestion box, or the same thing with a TripAdvisor or Google, if they're not giving those reviews, how do you get that feedback from people?
You ready for a stat here? 96% of people who have a complaint don't complain. So when you look at, if you see that, that negative review on TripAdvisor, take that and multiply it by 24, 25 or so, because that's, it's the amount of people that also impacted who didn't say anything, who just aren't going to come back. And I have no reason to think that doesn't just apply also to the employee side of it as well, to say there's a lot of employees, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be labeled as a complainer. I'll just deal with it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Until one day there's, this job's just not for me. Why? Don't worry about it. It's just me. It's just personal reasons, something like that. But being able to get that feedback gives you the opportunity to then make that improvement.
Well, do you know what? We have a chat room is set up, group chat, and we call it Revved Up. So for Revolution, obviously, but in the Revved Up, you can say whatever you like, no holds barred, and it can't be anonymous because obviously it's come from your phone or you're in the group chat. But it's amazing what does come out in the group chat, and when they think there's in the privacy, employees think that it's all private in here. I can say what I like. And actually they do. And we promised, Kevin and I, that we would never comment on Revved Up unless it was a positive. So we will never say, by the way, you didn't clean the bikes properly this afternoon and we've got to do it again tomorrow morning, blah, blah, blah. What we say is, well done, team. It was great. Oh, by the way, we forgot to wish Josh a happy birthday. So I want you all to do it. And within minutes, they'll all come up with that. But you do find some very interesting things in there which you have to take away as an employer, and you think, okay, well, yeah, I need to look at that in a different way. But they feel safe in their chat room, and they feel that they can say whatever they like, and often do. And I think that's where you can then turn it around to the other thing. You can't always act on everything they want, because mostly it's money related, or they want more money for doing the same job but they're not prepared to do it better or to add anything to it. And so you think, well, I'm whinging in the background here, but it's a safe place to be. So I'd encourage everybody to have a dumping pot almost. That's where you go and dump.
Yeah. Well, also thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. This episode is airing 2 days before my birthday, so I don't know if you knew that or not.
I knew that, obviously.
Well, I think the safe space is really critical for guests and for employees, because that's where you get the truth, right? So often I talk to people about the management meetings they have, and they say, well, nobody, chimes in. They don't say anything, or everything's fine, right? But once you get them into the more vulnerable, safe spot where they know that they're not going to have any negative repercussions, and that something might actually happen that's positive from this, if they're suggesting something that might impact their work environment, like this is going to, actually be listened to by someone, that's really empowering as well. Just knowing that there's somebody on the other end.
And I think that a huge part of that is showing your intention to say, I am seeking feedback, knowing that the answers might not be just self-serving or something I want to hear. How often are we sitting in a restaurant and the manager comes by and just quickly says, is everything all right tonight? Yep. Okay, great.
Everything good.
Boom. On to the next. Like, all right, checked it off. Everyone's fine, right? There was one time I was returning a car with Alamo. I'm sure Matt, I probably shared this story with you. And I returned the car. The gentleman who he took the keys, did the inspection around it, and then he said, what could we have done to have improved this experience for you? Not, did everything go okay? Is there anything that we could have done? He specifically phrased the question that he was looking for me to complain. And I was really impressed to the point where I felt bad. That I was like, no, everything actually was really good. I was like, well, maybe that's also a testament to their service culture if they're trying to seek all that feedback to make those improvements. And in my instance, I didn't have any friction in my experience. So I was like, I'm going to think about this. I'm on the plane. I'm going to think if there was anything, that I had to complain. And I didn't, but he had that intention to say, and this was obviously from the guest standpoint, to look for feedback that might not just be glowing positive fluff.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, people who do complain on TripAdvisor or leave you a bad comment or a bad review, they're in their safe space because they didn't have the courage to tell you face to face when they were there. And 90% of how we feed back to them, we always respond to negative comments, is, what a shame you didn't tell us before you left. Why didn't you tell us before you left and gave us the opportunity to put it right? But that's their space. That's their safe place to be. So I think we have to respect that too. And you have to read more into it. Well, what actually did happen?
Yeah.
Why have you felt so inclined to go down my driveway and then tell me what's wrong? Why didn't you tell me then? So you're right, we need a safe space to be able to complain.
Because they couldn't see the mailbox anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is ironic that their safe space in their in their home at their computer, in their hotel room on their phone is also what they're telling the entire world. That they just say, okay, I feel more comfortable just telling everyone else, but not telling AJ.
Well, I think that's true of a lot of people, just in terms of bad news or something that's not comfortable to talk about. Right? It's more comfortable to put it in your phone than to talk to another human being, because what's your phone going to do, right? I mean, yeah, you might get some negative comments, but you can choose not to read those. If I'm going to give Tom some feedback about his performance that I know he's not going to like hearing, right? That might be uncomfortable for me to share that information with him, because it's going to be uncomfortable for him and the whole 9 yards. So we have to really think about what is that safe space? What is comfortable for people? And then maybe the next step of that is, especially with employees, because you see those folks almost every day, how do we make that environment safe, right? Having the revved up area is a great spot. Are there other ways that we can make the personal interactions more safe so that they're willing to come to us?
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts?
I'm only thinking that you have to develop a place where it's safe to say these things. So if you do have to say something to an employee, you don't do it in general public areas. You generally bring them in your office and so on and so forth. So maybe we do need to think more about where they have their break time being a safer space and making it more comfortable for them to, instead of waiting to the end of the day and typing it on their space, they could actually feel safe enough to share it. And I think that's something we probably all need to work on, is to say, yeah, look, it's okay to do this. Now, you can't come in my office and complain for 7.5 of your 8 hours, but you can come in here for 10 minutes if it's really bothering you. Perhaps that's what we need to do, open more doors or something.
Maybe, and encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
But I also really liked what you said about that revved up space, because you said you and Kevin have committed that you're not going to go in there and say anything negative.
Exactly.
Right? It's all about positive. And I think when we are looking at those kind of uncomfortable situations, so often it's about the relationship, right? Do we have a strong enough relationship that, again, we'll go back to Tom and I can have that kind of conversation because we have a strong relationship, because we've given a lot of positives, right? We've already created a safe space, safe personal space where we can have those kind of conversations. And then even if it gets uncomfortable or even a little heated, we know we have the foundation of a solid relationship.
And there's no consequence. That's the real thing. You can say whatever you want. There are no consequences, perhaps, in this particular instance. Obviously, there are consequences to be done if they're illegal or whatever. But you have to give people the confidence to have that space and we're not going to act upon it because you've told me that you've broken whatever it might be.
Right. Or it could just be a thing about, this person I'm working with is saying things that make me uncomfortable.
Exactly. And I think that's the kind of position you need to get yourself into with your staff. The most important thing, though, is how you said earlier on, how do you retain them? Because there are people who just don't want to talk about it. I'm not that kind of person. I don't want to say that. I'd rather leave than say it. And that's something you need to think about too.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So what about taking all this and driving loyalty, both from the the guest and the employee standpoint? So we've talked about retention and kind of woven that into managing conflict. And curious as far as now reaching the final phase of referrals, word of mouth, both from the guest side and the employee side. So we've talked about some great ways to keep our guests coming back again and again, keep our employees retained and comfortable in their environment. And then what about ways to encourage guests to tell others that they need to come visit, as well as encouraging your employees to share how positive of a work environment they have so that others apply for a job?
One thing that we do, we have an employee referral program where they get an incentive. They get $50 if they refer a friend. So that's worked out pretty good because, if you have great employees, normally they have good friends for the most part. So that's worked out pretty well for us. And then so if they get friends or family to work there, as long as they have to complete their 90-day probation. So that's the requirement for that. And then, even when we do the barbecues and stuff like that, sometimes we try to do stuff if we do days, we'll try to do days sometimes where they're allowed to bring their friends to that, so that way their friends can see the park and stuff like that and have a good time.
Then it's an informal recruitment event.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if you're enjoying this appreciation barbecue we're throwing, here's an application.
Yeah, if we do a splash day or something.
Nice. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Danae with Dolphin Connection, and what I was going to say is that I mentioned this prior, that we do Google and TripAdvisor reviews. We encourage our team to get named in them. So they always joke with the guests, which makes it personable. We have a very intimate experience where we're at. So they'll say, if you liked us, my name's Susie. If you didn't like me, my name's Jamie. And it makes it a joke, and so that's fun, and that creates that memorable moment for a guest. And then when they get that follow-up email that we send, they do engage in our surveys. So not only do our employees get recognized because they have a named survey, but also every review that we get, I personally respond to. Yes, it can be time consuming, but I make a personal approach to that. So if it's Mrs. Smith, I will make sure I use her by name. I will thank her for her time and when she came, and I'll try to make something personal about her experience, whether it was thank you for celebrating your birthday with us or anything like that. That personable response to their review will make them 10 times more likely to refer me to a friend, because they're going to say they were so good. Even after we left, they were still acknowledging us personally. So I think that's good.
Yeah. You want to hear another stat? A 5-star review is 4 times more likely to mention a personal interaction in a staff member than a 4-star review. So if you think about, well, how can we really put fuel on the fire of our online reviews and word of mouth, then having that right in those direct service interactions and saying things like, my name's Josh, and if you weren't satisfied, my name's Matt, whatever it is. Sorry. And then getting them to remember you and having the humans they interacted with being such a critical part of the experience, and that being the memorable component of why they came and visited. Even if the component, if they came for animals, not for humans. If they came for ATVs and archery, not for it is the humans that are delivering the experience and facilitating those, and that's what the guest remembers.
Yeah. We had a very effective program with tour guides where they would get a lot of really positive feedback at the end of their tour, and we were just trying to figure out a way to kind of re-emphasize and amplify that personal naming of someone, because a lot of times people will walk out the door and they won't remember the name. So we started printing up business-sized cards and put all the social media on there and said, if you had a great, my name was, and people write in their name. So the tour guide can write their name on this card, hand them something they can stick in their pocket, and when they're back in their hotel room, they pull it out and go, oh, Alex, I'll put that, And so it just sort of reinforced, and it was very effective. All of a sudden, we had a huge increase in reviews that weren't just positive, but they specifically named the people they came in contact with. Yeah. So that was one way that worked for us.
And then think about the people who are reading those reviews and doing the research, and the amount of people who are influenced by reviews, that they know they're not just going to see a, copy and paste. It was great, it was fun. It was, but then seeing like, we came for my birthday, and John, took us specifically like on this, he was our tour guide, and he did this and this and this, and it was amazing to learn from him about then the guest is having a real experience that is not just it's not just copy and paste, right? Even though obviously you want the consistency of experience from one guest to another, you also want the as much consistency as possible in that personalization, that they're they'll walk out with a true memory.
Well, and then how often does that lead to, the word of mouth of, oh, you've got to go see John's tour, right? Yeah. Even if it's the only tour I've ever seen, if I had a great time, John's the best, right? And of course he is.
And then John's getting booked by name.
That's the way it works. But that's the way it works, right? And then you get more tours, and you get requested by name, and that's a confidence builder. That feels good. But I think that also works with the the guest in terms of, oh, now I've got a personal connection because my friend told me I got to go see John, and that's more of a personal connection than going to a company.
And because it feels special because they've got a name. It's a little in for them, and so that helps the relationship.
Yeah.
Good.
Excellent. Well, this is fantastic.
It is.
This is great.
Yeah. I think we're winding down on time now. So does anybody have any kind of last thoughts about the employee experience, the guest experience? And, our whole hypothesis is that there's many techniques that work for both. So I'd love to hear any kind of last thoughts that you have on that subject.
I think we're in an incredibly challenging environment right now for both. For employees and retention, and for guests that are, they're in a hurry, they're more impatient than ever, they can be a little grumpy, their expectations are incredibly high for what they want, and they want it now. And it's the same for employees in some ways. They're not willing to wait the 3 months that you're wanting them to wait to have something change. And so we just all have to be very diligent and look at things like we're doing today to figure out where can we be better.
So now I think would be a good opportunity to talk about one thing that comes up throughout all of our organizations for both the guest and employee experience. And personally, it's my favorite topic, and that is your angry guests. and your angry employees sometimes.
Yeah.
So talking about service recovery, complaint resolution, both on the guest and the employee side. Which side do you want to start on, Matt?
I say we start with the guests because I think everybody's got a guest story that they can share of one of their worst experiences. So I'd love to hear somebody's kind of worst experience with a guest. And it might be funny, it might be,
And maybe it's the worst experience with a guest, or maybe it is the best resolution.
Maybe there you go.
That,
Just,
ultimately we want to keep this upbeat, so it's something that kind of positive outcome.
Worst experiences, they happen.
They do.
But worst experiences with good recovery, those are pretty rare. Because when you get that cranky customer, sometimes you just can't do anything for them. You're just like, here, this is everything.
Well, Trent, yesterday you were talking about people that arrive late and they miss the bus and they're upset about that, and then trying to redirect that, even though it wasn't something that you did or it was the organization's fault, but it was it's something that you still kind of have the power of influence to kind of like manage their perceptions.
Yeah, on your back end, you're just cranky because they're late, they're screwing up your schedule. You have priorities, you have other customers. But you can't do that. You can't just be like, screw you, you're late, you're out of here. You have to work with them, and what our usual thing is, hey, we'll get you out as soon as we can. You've missed this bus. We'll get you out as soon as we can. What you don't tell them is that it might be 4 hours because the next 4 runs are all filled up. And then they're coming up and they're asking, like, oh yeah, we're trying, this bus is full, we're trying to see if we can squeeze you in somewhere. And it sounds really bad, and I know this is mainly targeted at attraction people, so y'all get it, is you're stringing them along. You're trying to just convince them that, hey, hang in there, we'll get you. But it's, when you're in, it's like I'm in literal travel where I'm transporting people. So like if you miss your airline, the airline's going to get you out when they can, but they're already scheduled and booked up. They can't get you in until somebody drops. And I'm in a similar situation, and you politely keep stringing them along so you don't lose them.
Right. By the way, I forgot to ask, who are you? Where are you from?
I didn't introduce myself. I'm Trent Anthony. I'm with Canoe Outpost Peace River in Arcadia, Florida.
Cool.
So do you ever confirm with them that, okay, you're on the third to last bus, I can get you on that because I have 2 seats, and then we'll try to get you on the next 2 in between there if there's space. Is that how that goes?
Well, I deal with a lot of groups, 10, 20 canoes, which is, 2 people a piece at least, sometimes 3. So, 20, 30 people is a full bus. And even if it's a group of 10, that's still like, half to a third of a bus, depending on where we are and what we're doing. So with that, the spacing becomes an issue, because like on a busy weekend where people are typically running late is when that's when it happens, is when we're already busy. So I've got 5 buses going at 10 o'clock and you miss the 8 o'clock run. I don't have room for half a bus or a full bus at 10 o'clock anymore. You're now at least at 11:30 maybe. But if somebody at 10 o'clock is running late like you are, maybe I can get you in at 10, but I can't guarantee it. Right. So I was telling you, I will get you out as soon as I can. I make no guarantee on when I'm going to get you out, but by 1:30 at the latest, the last run, I know I have room. So probably way before then though. But I never promise a set time. Just keep them on the hook, keep working them until hopefully you can get them out and they're still happy. And it genuinely works out 99% of the time. In 20 years, I've probably had one person just get cranky because they couldn't get on the bus and just like end up saying, screw it, we're out of here. So, it's been what we do, and it's because we have scheduling. We're on a hard timeline. Not everybody is. Yeah. I'm sure, Chrissy, you've got set schedules.
We do.
Do you have enough full capacity sometimes where you run out of room?
We do, yeah. We have Christina from Sawgrass Recreation Park. We offer airboat tours in the Florida Everglades. We do have very fixed capacity, and we are selling out now about 20% of the time. We've intentionally brought our numbers to 30% under what they used to be at in terms of levels. We don't want our staff overwhelmed. We want a better experience for our guests. So while our sellout days used to be between 11 and 1,300 people, we are now at 800. And we'll never see those days again, which is a wonderful feeling. I feel like I'm protecting my people from that chaos. We do sell out. We try very hard to be accommodating, even if we're sold out. Luckily our vessels are 15 to 25 on capacity, so usually a couple extra heads we can try to work it in and take care of people. Our private tours are a little stickier. We do have set departure times, and when we are sold out, they are pretty back to back. But kind of like if you went for a massage appointment and you were 5 or 10 minutes late, we may have to shave off just a few minutes of time if we do have that captain recommitted. on the next tour. But you can make anything better, I think, with a free bottle of water or a nice little snack, or maybe a gator tooth in a bottle, or just a really wonderful temperament. So what we will do is if they're 10 minutes late for their tour, we'll say, okay, we've got everything ready for you guys. We're going to get you on the water in 5 minutes. It's only 15 minutes off your timing. We'll see if we can't give that captain an extra 5 or 10 minutes to be out on the water. The next group's a few minutes late checking in. We'll do what we can. So the next group, by the time they get their wristbands and sign their waivers and then a few free waters and some nice smiles, and I'll go out and personally chat with them to kind of have a little conversation. And they feel like they're getting off right on time. Last group got almost all of their time. And everyone leaves happy. So we try our best to accommodate. We have some extreme circumstances where we can't. But other than that, really, I think you can fix most things with a smile and a water. I think we've only had maybe a half a dozen people over the last 17 years I've been there at the park where it really ended in a situation where it's like a toxic relationship. This dating isn't going well. I appreciate that you did want to enjoy an airboat ride today, but this is my family that is here working with me. My customers are my friends that are my new guests that are here, and this is a little toxic for our environment. So while we love you and we're glad that you came to try to see us, I'm going to give you every dollar back, and then I wish you all the best in your day and on your journey, and you have a nice day. And it's almost I don't accept that.
I wish you could see that
and that's
in person, because I don't want you to have
it
that
is wonderful, and
that would be hysterical to watch.
It is really fun, and my staff kind of love it when I go into ultra customer service mode, and they kind of sit back like, what's going to happen? And they get very excited about it. And I think I don't allow anyone to let us feel riled. I don't allow them that part of my day. I don't allow them that part of my soul, just like I do in my personal life. And I think it's okay that you have an expectation to want to enjoy an activity or an opportunity that we're presenting, but there is no right to it. Like flying in the magical tubes in the sky, that is a gift. We go there, we sit down, we behave, we act polite, we are respectful of the tube in the sky. And I feel the same way about the airboats. The Everglades, it's a beautiful corner of the world. My boats are a beautiful, majestic fleet of 20 vessels worth several $1 million, and my staff are my very, very, very personal family. So no, you can't come in and you can't be mean to my Tori. She is my angel. No, you cannot treat her that way. And I think we've gotten to a point where we just have a hard no thank you limit on that kind of behavior. And if it's starting at check-in, it's just going to continue from there. And I don't think that we can meet their expectations on any level. That behavior is just going to continue throughout the day, and I think it will still result in a negative review no matter what fantastical service we provide. They could see 9 gators and a bird swooping in and eating a fish, and they're still going to have a horrible time. So I think it's better to stop that experience when it's happening right there at the gates and just uninvite that person to be a part of your activity for the day and respectfully move on and then start healing as a group.
Christina, have you cut since you cut capacity at the place? Have you noticed them shopping more because it's not as crowded, or even going to you have that little cafe or actually like food court area? Are they spending more time there now?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're finding is overall we've increased some customer satisfaction. The day after Christmas, I was 30 minutes or less of a wait to get on the boats all day. And that's the same a wait on a 300-person day as it was on an 800-person day. We had proper staff in place, and also my staff, they all got lunch breaks. My captains got water and restroom breaks, and everybody ended the day not feeling like haggard cats. Like, when you go home and you're like, what was that? Like, what just happened? And that doesn't happen on our busier days anymore. It used to be like a marathon, and yeah, we're running around and there's lots of people there, and that's okay. But we see customers, there's more room in the gift shop. We only allow 60 guests an hour to sign up for our experiences and check into the park. Well, I have most days 4 to 5 captains working. I can put almost 200 people an hour on the water. But with that 60, it's a nice volume. I also have walk-ins who didn't make that reservation, even though they were supposed to. We got plenty of room for them. We also have the opportunity to upsell a private tour every hour. Got an extra captain around. As soon as somebody asks, we can immediately accommodate. And our revenues we're breaking records. We're on 18 months straight of breaking records, even with 10 to 20% less passenger count. So it's kind of the sweet spot. I just had a staff meeting recently, and the first graph is going in a downward direction. I said, but hang in there, guys, it gets better. So this is just the passenger count, and this is what we want to see. We want 20% down. It's okay. And they're like, we want less people. I'm like, just wait with me. And we've also uninvited 17 of our prior contracted relationships through group business and corporate business to work with our company anymore. We had some very heavy volume models and some
I would like to say it's more of an old Florida mentality. It's take somebody's money, put them on a bus, make the money. I don't care about the customer, and that is not it doesn't align with our morality and our views for our customers anymore. So we have stopped doing business with almost 24 companies since COVID, and when they come back to us, I think we were in a better place mentally and physically, and we were like, oh, but no thank you. We wish you well, but no thank you. And it was so healing for my staff. I had tour guides screaming at my staff, telling us how to run our business, treating my people inappropriately. So we no longer work with many of them, but that has really worked to our advantage. It's made a lot more opportunities for direct customer business and direct volume, and it's worked out very much to our advantage. We've rebounded pretty successfully, so I don't think we're ever going to go back to those relationships. It feels quite good.
That's amazing.
Yeah. One of the things I heard kind of in both of those scenarios was about boundaries, right? And that's, I think, something we don't necessarily talk a lot about, because to your point, Chrissy, we want to put as many people on that bus as possible, as many people on that boat as possible, and we don't have the room for the what ifs, right? And we can't accommodate that. And I think to your point, when you reduce the amount of people, you can actually increase the experience that they have, which obviously increases your word of mouth, and it increases how much they're spending in the gift shop and on food and beverage and things like that. And so you're actually, looking at your business in a very, very different way, but you're also putting boundaries around how much you're going to tolerate from a guest perspective, which leads right into the employee experience, because now you're saying we're going to prioritize the employee experience because we're not going to allow those guests to beat them up.
Mm-hmm. And still having the business, I would say, justification to back that up, right, and doing that. So let's flip it. Let's talk about it from the employee complaint resolution standpoint. Does anybody have any good stories, examples, or even just general strategies, even if it's not any specific anecdotes, of managing employee conflict if they are expressing dissatisfaction, whether it's about their job, their leader, coworkers, guests, work environment, anything there, and the abilities to resolve that?
Yesterday I wasn't thinking of anything.
Trent again.
Yes, this is Trent again. Canoe Outpost. So I kept thinking, I'm like, I don't really have any good stories. I actually just let a guy go. About a month or two ago, all of a sudden, one of my employees walks off the job. He's livid. He's about to get in a fight with one of the other staff, and I go out there and I'm like, he's literally been with me for 20 years. I'm like, if Pete's gone, something went haywire. So I call Pete. I'm like, just come back. I'll figure it out. We'll talk in a minute. Let me go find out what's going on. So I come out of the office. I go to find out what's going on. And he's mad at one of the other employees. The other employee is down there on the dock telling customers we don't provide water. And he's like, you have an OSHA requirement to provide potable water. I'm like, I'm way too small to be under OSHA. I provide potable water. And why are you telling this to customers? And he was literally down there telling customers I don't provide drinking water. And I'm like, that's the same water I drink right there out of the hose. My cup has that water right there. He wanted purified distilled water provided for drinking water. It was too good to drink out of the sink or the hose, the same water everybody else drinks. He wanted purified distilled water. And if he had just come to me and said, hey, look, man, I can't drink the well water. It bothers me, can you get me a case of bottled water? I'll spend $4 on a weekend. But he didn't. He went and complained to customers, and instead of having drama with other employees where they're mad at him because he's bashing on us, and he's been with us for 20 years and knows we take care of our staff, he was bashing us customers, and the other employee got so upset about it, he was leaving. And I wasn't going to lose the 20-year employee over the new 20-year-old employee that has been there for 3 weeks. And so I said, if that's how you feel, bye. And he didn't argue, just took off.
Yeah,
he was done, and I'm like...
That's what's happening right now throughout. And we have a lot of older employees. I'm Joe Pereira with Guest Services. But we have a lot of employees that have been with us for many years. But right now, especially seasonal employees, they walk in, they don't like something, they turn around and walk right out. They don't even punch out or anything. They'll just say, I'm going to the bathroom, you don't even see them anymore. And that's happening throughout the whole industry. And it's not even a question of them being upset over anything. If it doesn't fit what they're looking for, they're done. They're just done. and when that, and they're gone, and when that, and that's what's flipped since the pandemic. I think the whole thing has flipped, you know, and that's. But I think that's the new world we have right now going on.
Well, I think people's expectations for what they're getting into may have changed, right? To that point. Yeah. And you know, we heard people talk about it yesterday. People want to work for an organization that supports them and helps them, and there's a purpose behind it. And you know, it's sometimes hard to translate that into a job where you're selling T-shirts. Right? What's my bigger purpose, right? Well, maybe it's going to conservation or something of that nature. But, you know, when people have those kind of expectations, and we as as leaders may not be listening to them, or we may not have the mindset of, oh, things have changed a little bit since 2019, and we're not looking at things a little differently, we may, you know, encounter those different situations. So I totally think, you know, you're right in terms of those expectations. The question then is, how do we deal with it? You know, what do we do about it?
One of the things, Pam from Gulfport Marine Park, one of the things that we've experienced is we try to accommodate if they, need something else. Like, for example, there was this one woman that we hired in our grill area, in our food and beverage area. And we went through the whole interview process, and she, seemed great and wonderful. And then she worked for 2 days and said, oh, by the way, I can't work on weekends. I said, excuse me? I said, you didn't mention that in your interview process. We need you for a cook in the grill. We need you on weekends. I said, but let me check with the schedule. Let me see if I can work it out with the other team members, and let me see what I can do. So I was able to switch around the schedule and accommodate her to have weekends off. Then 2 weeks later, she's like, the kitchen is too hot, and I don't want to work in the kitchen anymore. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you right now. I hired you to be a cook. We tried to accommodate with you, and we worked with you with your schedule, but now you're telling me it's too hot in the kitchen and you don't want to work with us anymore. I just don't know that I can accommodate you of that change. I mean, I tried, but it's like they just keep pushing and keep wanting more, and at some point you finally just have to say, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate your needs, and just cut your ties. And that's happened several times to us in different departments. They get there and they just don't like it all of a sudden anymore.
I will say that's something, Christina from Sawgrass, I will say that's something we are transitioning on. It's a cue that I took from Jennifer from Line Country Safari, is that we are developing a career page on our website. And we went out and we listed very specific things that are going to be required of that position or that task at the park. So I don't think we were doing a fantastic job of really explaining to people what it was going to involve to do that job. And that's really unfair. It's really not on their part. And I really sat down and I said, when we're hiring them and we're interviewing them to be a clerk, we're interviewing them for maintenance. We're 17 acres of Everglades land. Maybe our maintenance position is not just like it is at an apartment complex, or maybe even assisting at Home Depot or wherever they've worked before. We're quite different. We have 17 acres of land that we maintain. Occasionally there's a gator in the mix. So let's be more honest about what they may encounter in that process, so that potentially we can weed out some of the candidates. When they read it, we'll say, it can be a warm environment. It can be outdoors. You will be in the elements, working in the elements sometimes. And I'm hoping that helps with that side of the situation. We've maybe had a little bit of fall off for that reason. But we've also, even though we're short-staffed, we've also intentionally been monitoring more of a personality inclusion in the workplace. And for the first time in the last 18 months, we've been kind of eliminating people that are not meeting the culture and the workflow and the environment. We have a very unique culture. I would say it's a bit of a hippie culture. We're very laid back. We're very informal. Titles don't mean a whole lot. We're not a very title heavy company. And so somebody who is seeking that power and it's important to them to be in charge of other people and to push other people, it isn't going to work well for them in our environment. We practice servant leadership, which means it's kind of the pyramid of you would normally think of as upside down. So I am actually at the very bottom, and all of my staff kind of float to the different levels to the top, and I am in service to them. And that doesn't work for a lot of people. If they've come from a traditional environment that may be a factory or a union or even just a corporate world, they are not okay with that. They're very uncomfortable not knowing the black and white and the limits, but who's my boss? But we do have bosses.
but we're going to be working next to you, not coming out and barking at you. So we have had to eliminate several individuals from the organization that did not meet that mindset because it was starting to affect the culture. And even though we were short-staffed and it meant me back on the front lines again for 3 or 4 months while we filled that position, I will say we have seen great success with that because I started to see that trickle effect of that one personality and how it started to spread to an area, a department, and then a park-wide feeling. And it's uncomfortable to do. It's hard when you admit that a person's personality is not the match. Not that they can't do the job, but just the way they're working with coworkers and the way they're speaking. And that is very uncomfortable, a conversation to have and uncomfortable steps to take. But it has served us very well. And again, another area we're protecting the staff on is I won't let somebody come in here and be this way with you and start bossing you around. We don't boss people around. But we've had good success. But I took that lead from Jennifer. I think Jennifer practices very similar things, and I've learned a lot from her on that front.
Yeah, Jennifer's amazing.
I think it's so important, like you just said, that to right up front give them the good, the bad, the ugly, just right up front. Because I mean, we didn't do this 5 years ago. It was always a rosy picture. Oh my God, the customers are going to be the greatest you'll ever have. You'll never have, and you'll get your lunch breaks right on time. But you don't. So I think that's what's worked out for us now is given the whole story. This is it. Can you handle it?
I have a couple thoughts based on what Matt was saying. This is Trent with Canoe Outpost again. What you were saying about, it's hard to say, what are we doing? At least on the attraction level, we've got it easy. We're helping people make memories. And I took that a few years back as like that, somebody asked me what I do for like an elevator speech. Yeah. And I was like, I help you make memories with your families and friends is my new like shtick for that. And as to like the employment thing, you have to figure out how to communicate with your people. But like her staff that works with her is not the same staffing people I have for me, and you've got people all over, so you've got wide varieties of people. So I don't even know how you handle staffing. Like, how do you develop a culture when you've got, 18 locations?
Well, our employee staffing throughout the United States is 7,000.
Yeah. How do you develop a culture when you have 7,000 people in all 50 states probably? Y'all are spread wide. And you're like a dozen to 18 just in Florida.
Yeah, we have, here in Florida, we have, you're right, 18 locations.
Yeah. So there's 18 locations, and just like Chrissy's only 3 hours away. So with 3-hour drive, her culture is 100% different of the people. Like what me and her both like ascribe, like, she describes it better as servant leadership, but like it's a kind of like FAA, it's a family thing, I have my employees' backs, they have my back. That's why the one employee he was ready to go swing on another employee because the employee was bad-mouthing us. That level of loyalty and trust can only be built by giving them that same loyalty and trust. Yeah. And that is what helps you communicate that you're giving out memories and that kind of feeling to your customers. You're making them part of your family as well. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what your attraction is, what you're selling, you can still do that. And that can always be something you can say is your purpose.
Absolutely.
I think really does. Sorry, it's Christy with Rumble Buzz, marketing communications. But I would say, so for years and years working in the attractions, that all does start with the leadership, though. You can't create that feeling of trust amongst your staff or amongst your team members if it doesn't exist from the top. And that's what I've seen a lot of is leaders trying to push down that you've got to trust each other, you've got to take care of each other. But it doesn't exist on those upper levels. And so that's key. I mean, and I think that's how you create a culture. If you've got 7,000 locations, it starts at the top.
And I have to say, for my company, Guest Services Incorporated, we've been around 105 years, and I have to say, through the pandemic, though, but you're absolutely right. From the very start of the pandemic, our executives were on a team call like every 2 weeks with the whole company. This is what's going on out there. This is what we're doing. This is what we're experiencing. But this is what we're going to do for you. But you have to tell them, and if they don't know, and if it doesn't come from the horse's mouth, well, then you know what? Then they're all making up stories along the way. So
Yeah, I think my name's Retta Logan from AAA Flag and Banner. I think as attractions, when you guys are hiring people, you have a challenge because I went there and I made memories with my family. So now I think I want to work there, and your role is shifted. So what I think, like where you had the problem with the cook, there's almost like you've got to spend a day before you even accept the job, going to that department, maybe sweeping the bathroom, seeing how the whole backstory works. Because my story, when I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to be at Flamingo Gardens and experience this whole thing, and I'm going to be able to stand and pet the flamingo all day, it's not my job. But I think it is, because that's the memory I made.
Yeah, that's right. That is true.
So you guys need to think about that a little bit when you're hiring people. How do we integrate them versus this, you're going to work here, but really you're going to work here. This is what it's.
You're going to do the work while you're here.
But that used to be magical. That is how you brought them in, right?
Right.
Like I spent years with SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, and you were like, "Don't you want to be part of this?" And now you're sweeping cigarette butts, So it has shifted because they do. I mean, I have a 17-year-old daughter. What she expects out of a job, very different than what I expected at 17. I thought I was someone's servant. She's like, "What are you going to do for me?" Because I can go next door and they'll pay me more and I'll have better hours. Like they have so much opportunity and they know it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I'm hearing that is a parallel in both the employee experience and the guest experience goes back to the boundaries, right? As we were talking about, boundaries in terms of the guests that we're going to uninvite to our facilities. I think there's employees that we uninvite to come back, right? And if they're creating a toxic culture, if they're creating issues for other people, then we have to be able to say it's not working out. But I think we have the same issue mentality, especially right now, where we're struggling for staff. And like, oh my gosh, you're going to actually show up and be here to work?
You'll tolerate a lot of folks show up.
Right, exactly. And so you do tolerate those things, and you tolerate, lower standards than you really should. Right, and that creates a worse culture, and then the leaders are trying to figure out anything they can to overcome that, when really the answer is we probably need to run short-staffed for a while, because those people that are there that are really bought in and engaged, that may be 5 people less than we need, but we know we're going to get such a better return from those folks than having those 5 bad apples that are really going to screw up everything.
Like she's saying, limit capacity to the right amount.
Yeah.
Limit capacity, what you can do with the good staff you have. Do it right, or don't. Instead of trying to just overbook and kill it and do it by volume, do the job right, and you'll do better with less people.
I have a question for Genevieve. Genevieve, you guys have probably what I know to be one of the greatest generational gaps among your staffing. You have so many wonderful senior volunteers and senior staff members that have been with your organization for so long, that are really sage, but I know you also have a really big handful of very young, very new talent. How do you guys navigate that at Flamingo Gardens?
That's a great question.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah, we are. It is such a family environment that we went through the pandemic and we were short-staffed, and you wouldn't be amazed. Like, nobody dropped off. We had to furlough employees, but everyone came back, and just the older employees that are training these younger employees that are coming in after them and giving them not only the information for the job that they're doing, but the historical information about where we've been as a company and where we are now is really important. And then for our senior volunteers as well, being able to train up the new volunteers that come through as well. So that's been really great. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was that in addition to our guests and our employees, we have the pleasure of having that third piece, which is members. So there's a sense of entitlement with a lot of members that you have to, it's a slippery slope dealing with them on a different scale as our regular guests, because we might only see that guest once this year, but we might see that member 6 times this week. And so making sure that they're happy while at the same time
giving them realistic expectations of what that's going to look like. So
that's an interesting level of consideration. I didn't think about the element of the membership. I'm sure museums deal with the same the same kind of a blessing as well as certainly a challenge. But that's an interesting element you bring into that, because they do become like another layer of your staff, those regular customers that have those needs and special wants. And wow, very interesting. I never considered that. Thank you, Genevieve.
And I guess it's an interesting challenge, because from a member standpoint, you want to engage your members and you want to be able to foster their loyalty so they continue to visit, they continue to spend and refer and continue to renew, while at the same time setting those parameters around them so that I think you use the word entitled, or that sense of entitlement that they are owed because I am elite, because I am a member, and then that can be looked at from the employee standpoint as well. If you want to do everything to be able to serve your employees and meet their needs, while at the same time, if there's more senior employees who feel that they are more entitled than more junior employees than or whatever it is, to I would say kind of balance that of focusing on ensuring that their needs are met, that their expectations are exceeded, while at the same time keeping them in their lane, I would say.
Well, I think the other interesting part about that is that, your employees, you may see them 5 days a week or 3 days a week or something, but it's on a more consistent basis, right? You may have a guest that comes in once a season, but to your point, the members are coming in maybe even more frequently than a team member, right? And so it's not just about, creating a great experience once, but you've got to do that consistently. And that's one of the challenges I've seen in a lot of organizations, especially with large staff, right, is consistency. And making sure that you have the process, a system, the right heart for it to be able to do that on a consistent basis. So maybe that's another element to kind of throw out there is, how do we do that on a consistent basis? High level of standards for our team, high level of standards for our members and the people that visit us frequently.
The line you said about the right heart, you got to find people that are the right people. If they're not the right people, you can work and work and work and pressure the system and push on it and set all the rules you want. But if they don't have that heart for it, you're wasting your time. You're training a drone. And drones aren't going to produce good guest experiences. You're going to end up with mediocre experiences for your guests and mediocre reviews and mediocre customers after that.
Because it all comes down to the human element of it, both for the guest and the employee experience.
And we are all human.
We are all human. And I think that a lot of the things that we talked about today, when we talk about the intersection of the guest and employee experience, and this has just been an unbelievable, lively discussion, and we've, I think, like ping-ponged back and forth a lot and really wove it all together nicely. And the reason why we have this theory that so many of the elements of it are very much the same is because we are all human, right? Whether it is an employee, whether it is a guest, whether it is a member, whether it is, whatever it is, manager, leader, wherever in the employee cycle or wherever in the guest cycle it is, we're in the human-to-human type of experience. The other thing, too, all the things that we talked about here, and when we talk about the elements that go into the guest experience, the elements that go into the employee experience, everything relates down to the success of the business in general. So the two main things that we're talking about are guest loyalty and employee retention. When we talk about exceeding guests' expectations and resolving service failures, we're talking about being able to increase the lifetime value of a guest so that they come back, they become that member or that annual pass holder, they come back every single season, they tell their friends. And then from the employee side, we do the exact same thing. So they stay longer, and so they refer other people, and they become an advocate and ambassador of the business as well. So all of these things just go straight down to the ultimate success of the business and of the industry in general. So we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We're so grateful for FAA, and it's not just that we are all humans, but
we are all Attraction Pros! Woo!
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release, and even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit AttractionPros.com.